Hey watch friends, today we're going to take a look at a piece from the watch company Direnzo, and this is their DRZ04, also known as the Mondial. If you stay tuned to the channel or are subscribed to the channel, and if not, please do hit that subscribe button, it helps me out. You might have already seen that I did an unboxing of this gray here, and in fact I actually like this so much in the time that I've spent with it so far, I went ahead and ordered the white, and while I was preparing for this review, the white came in, so I figured we'll turn this into a double review. This is one that, being the DRZ04, this is the fourth model from the company, and this is one that really caught my eye right off the bat. I was a little bit torn on color, hence ending up with two, but I ended up initially choosing this gray. I like the industrial look. This one, it has the full cohesiveness. It almost looks like it's built from a block of steel. As has been kind of the theme so far to 2021, this one is a Genta-inspired style watch. There are many different ones out there. The PRX, we did a Batavi Architect, and just loads of other ones. This one, though, particularly caught my eye. I like the fact that it has kind of flowing lines, so it breaks from the traditional Genta case, and it keeps kind of that feel to it, to where you can still tell that it is undeniably somewhat of an homage or inspired by that, but at the same time it put its own touches on that, and that's what I really liked about this one, but we'll talk about that in full detail. Before we delve into this, I did want to mention the materials for this. So this does come with a box, canvas watch roll. It actually comes standard on a butterfly clasp, but if you saw the unboxing, it does come with a fold-over clasp as well, so you have the option. That's a really cool touch for that. If you haven't checked it out, though, do go ahead and hit that unboxing. You can see that in more detail as everything it comes with. As far as the specs, this one does come standard with a 2-year warranty, so better than the standard one. Not as long as some, but still very solid. Let's go ahead and get into the specs. First, I'm going to go ahead and set one to the side. We'll switch up throughout the video. We'll start with the gray here. For the overall specs on this, and these of course are going to be the same between the two, this is just different colors, but the overall specs, this case is coming in on my calipers at 40.2 millimeters, and that's roughly at the 3 to 9 position. The bezel does step down slightly, and that's going to be coming in at 38.6 millimeters. And pardon all the fingerprints, I'll say that up front throughout. This thing is a fingerprint magnet. I've tried to keep it on the pillows to touch it a little bit less, but you'll still see some of those as we go through. As far as the lugs, this one with being an integrated bracelet, and we'll of course look at that in detail, I measured from the first link here, so that's coming in at 23.8, just to give you an idea as the general size for that. The actual lug itself is only 14.1, and of course with being integrated, it's not really designed to be strap change friendly for that. It's designed for a more cohesive overall concept and flow. The lug to lug is coming in at a nice small 47.9, so that's a pretty versatile size there for both small and large wrists. And this, of course, does have a female end link there, so that is your actual wearable lug to lug. The thickness, while we're looking over at the side here, this is only coming in at 11.4 millimeters, which is pretty darn thin. We've had some thinner ones on the channel, especially the Zelos Nova, but especially for being an automatic as opposed to just a hand wind or mechanical, this I think is nice. The mid case is actually supportive of that also. It's only coming in at 6.1 millimeters, so nice and skinny there also. The crystal, as you might have seen here, this does have an ever so slight dome to that, so it is technically a double dome crystal. Let's go ahead and switch over, give the white some screen time here. The crystal on this, that dome, I think that was a perfect touch, and that's what I commented to Sergio, the owner of Direnzo, that I just don't think this one would have been the same with a flat crystal. But this is a sapphire on that, and I like that it didn't do a high dome because that doesn't take away either, and it already has enough with the actual dial, which we'll look at in full detail here. So this is a sapphire crystal. It does have an inner AR coating. The movement on this. This is going to be coming with a Sellita movement, and this is the SW200-1, and it is the Elaborate grade. And this does actually have what's referred to as, I believe, an Inca block, and that's a shock protection system that's installed in there as well. So that just gives it a little more durability for vibrations, for shock jars, those kind of things. So that's a nice touch there. The water resistance on this one is coming in at 100 meters or 10 atmospheres of water resistance, so adequate for its style. Certainly not quite to the level of a lot of dye watches, but I think this is more in the vein of your sports watch. Think like your Omega, Aquaterra, those kind of things where it can get exposed to water, but it's definitely, obviously, fixed bezel and everything. It's not meant to go diving into the deep. This one, sized to my 6.5-inch wrist, this is coming in at 135.9 grams. So it is respectable weight. It's not the lightest in the world. It's on, I would say, the lighter side of what I would call like a middleweight, but at the same time, it definitely has a little bit of feel to it. You know, this is one that's not like titanium where it completely disappears on the wrist, which a lot of people don't like, but at the same time, it's certainly far from a heavy watch. Even on this butterfly clasp, it wears very well. So with some of those specs out of the way, let's go ahead and look at deeper into the characteristics of this. We'll do a full walkthrough, get into what I like, what are some of my critiques, and what is the overall summary. So first, let's go ahead and look at some of the colors available. The colors on this one, as we saw here, we have both the gray and white that we're checking out today. This also is available, though, in a meteorite, and that was a special edition. But then there is a teal or a blue color that's available, and a green. Each of them, I think, are really striking, great-looking pieces. Looking at the actual watch itself, transitioning over to the dial, I mean, this is one of the claims to fame of this piece. And the reason it got its name Mondial is because this is actually a one-piece dial construction. So one of the things as we look throughout that you'll notice is there's no seam, so you see that turn in there. This is actually 3D CNC machined from a solid piece for that dial. So that rehaut or that perimeter edge and chapter ring, that does slope up, but it actually integrates directly from the dial, which I think is just a fantastic bold look to it, very attractive, and one of the big things that caught my eye with this particular one. Absolutely love that aspect. This does have double markers, so of course you have the applied indexes, which we'll talk about, but then additionally it does have the printed markers as well, and you do have an outer perimeter kind of going up, and I think that actually accentuates and highlights the bowl, but then you do have the inner as well. And you know, that's something that I think could have made it look busy, but I think at least on both of the colorways here, and from the pics that I've seen from the other ones, I think it was actually integrated very well, and I love that touch. I think it helps with legibility, but I really actually like the aesthetic also. So I think that was very well done. The printing in the text all the way around, you can see, of course, between the white and the gray that there is a difference. The white does print in black and the gray does print in white. Both of them, though, do have at the 12 o'clock the logo, Direnzo, and then Geneve. And I apologize for pronunciation there. Then down at the 6 o'clock, you do have the automatic, and that is in a different type of font. It's almost like a cursive, but it's a more fancy font down at the 12 o'clock. And then, of course, it does have a very cleanly integrated date window at the 6 o'clock position. Love the way that goes. I think it's seamless. I think it's cohesive. The entire thing, I think the design across the board, as we'll talk about and look at, I think is just exceptionally well done on these Mondials. The hardware. So looking at the handset for this, the handset is going to be coming in. So this is a custom handset. As you can see, so the overall theme for this one, this was inspired by vintage, by aviation. I apologize, getting out of focus there. This one was inspired by aviation, and you can see that it looks kind of like propeller handset. So you have some skeletonization, and really just the overall shape, I think, does look like the prop on an old school plane. So that's very cool, and I like that a lot as well. And then these, of course, are going to be loomed. The same thing is true for your markers, which, of course, the markers are, as we mentioned, applied, and they are going to be oval-shaped all the way around. You have, of course, the most prominent ones at your 12, 3, and 9 positions. Shifting over and looking at the lume, as I mentioned, this is BGW9, and I found the lume to be well applied on this one. That was a critique of Direnzo's in the past. I personally hadn't experienced one, but I know that was a common complaint. And I will say with this one, as you can see up on the screen here, the lume, I think it picks up well. This is with natural or UV charging. I think it endures, and overall I think is pretty well executed. Transitioning back to the bezel. The bezel on this, as we already talked about, is a fixed bezel. It does have a mix of finishes here, so you're going to have brush, so that's a radial brushing around the perimeter. And then on the edge where it's a chamfer cut, pardon all the fingerprints, this does have a nice polish. And then that goes back to where it has on the flat is still a full polish as well. So really nice, clean look there. I like the bezel. The bezel, as we already talked about, does have a step down. Not only is it set back, but it does step with that lip, then chamfer, and then flat, and then transitions into the case itself. As far as the case, this is one of the things that I really like with this particular model. Not only is the finishing really well done, but additionally this does actually have a coating across the full the case, the bracelet, the bezel, everything on this. So that increases the Vickers. I believe they claim 800. It's not quite as hard as some coatings that I've seen where they claim 1200, but I do think that's a nice upgrade, and that will help for especially all these polished parts that you have throughout. That will help to keep this looking new longer, which is something that I really appreciate, especially being pretty meticulous myself. The actual case, as you can see on the side of the case, it does have nice linear brushing, and then you do have polished accents throughout. The polished accents on the case itself are very well done. You do have upper and lower polishing, and that does carry down as it tapers into that lip, so that really looks nice at the lug integration there. The case itself, you can see, is relatively flat, somewhat of a slab style, and then down at the lugs itself, it does have just that slight downturn to it. This, as you can see, the lugs do sit relatively flush with the back of the case, so that causes it to settle nicely onto the wrist. And let's go ahead and pop that back onto wrist so we can get another look at that. I think this wears very well. I think it wears thinly, and I think this makes it a good do-all watch to where you can wear this in a more formal type of environment, or you can wear it for casual use as well. So I think that was well executed, and I like this case shape. Found it to be very comfortable overall. Additionally, with this, of course, as we've talked about, this does have an integrated bracelet. I think the bracelet integration is very cleanly done. I like the way that curves there with the actual lug itself, and then that just seamlessly goes into the bracelet. Very clean. Excellent. Switching over to the crown, you can see that this one is coming in. This is going to be a screw-down crown. This is coming in at 6.9 millimeters, and of course, this does have a signed logo there, and as you can see for the finishes, pardon the fingerprints again, but this does have mixed textures here, and on the outer perimeter that does have polish. You'll see a judicious use of polish throughout. I don't think they overdid it, but it does definitely have a lot of polish going on. Switching to the case back itself, this is one of the more attractive case backs that I've seen. It actually reminds me of some of the Zelos pieces that we've looked at, particularly with the key integration and then the mix of textures and finishes, but I'm going to spin that around if you want to pause anything and check that out. I think it's very nicely done. Of course, in the middle here, you can see this does have an exhibition case back to highlight that Sellita movement. I think it's attractively done. Nice Geneva striping on the custom rotor there, and then you have the logo integration in red in the center on the glass itself, which I like that as well. So I think that's clean, and that's good looking too. As far as the, let's flip that around there. As far as the overall finish, you can see throughout, that is raised up there and has like a nice bead blasting to set that off. But I'm a big fan of this key integration, and that with having the keys, this is a screw down case back, as you might expect to be able to achieve that 100 meters of water resistance. Yeah, you could possibly get away with it otherwise, but it's what I would expect for this style. All right, so now with being an integrated bracelet, this is one that we really want to highlight through this, is how is the actual bracelet integration. So for this, I had already mentioned that this is coming in at the top, starting at about 24 millimeters. This does taper down to about 18 millimeters. So you have a pretty aggressive taper to that. But as you can see, I think it's really clean. It has a nice, as you're going through, and this of course sized again to my 6.5-inch wrist, but I think that's very smooth, very flowing, and I think it fits with the overall theme of this watch. As we've already looked at and talked about, this does have the center links are going to be completely polished. And then on the outer edge, you have that polishing as well. So again, nice mix. I think these H links in being brushed here with the pop of the polish, I think it adds a lot of nice contrast to that and just keeps the general visual appeal and intrigue that you see throughout the entirety of this watch. The bracelet itself, it is going to be a fully articulating, and this is fully articulating on the inside. So it does stop as far as going towards the outside, but on the inside, as you can see, just great articulation all the way through. That has a very nice drape to it. So with being an integrated bracelet, it's always a risk. Are you going to like it or not? Will the butterfly clasp fit me or not? Here, no worries whatsoever. The bracelet's very comfortable, and the butterfly clasp, if it doesn't fit you, you can always switch over to the fold over that they included as well. The clasp finish. So with the butterfly clasp here, if you saw the unboxing, you've already seen the fold over. The butterfly does have nice branding there, and then on the internal, you have nice machine turning for that, so it just adds visual appeal as well. So there really weren't any details that were overlooked on this for overall integration. As far as the bracelet, this is secured with screws, so that should make for relatively easy adjusting as you go through, but we'll talk about that more towards the end of the video. So overall, for the specs and finish, that covers most of the areas. I wanted to go ahead and look at this next to some different watches just to give you an idea as to how some of these compare. Not necessarily direct competitors, but this Zelos Nova here, this is one especially going the gray against this Meteorite. This gives you an idea as far as sizing. Technically, this one's 38. Technically, this one's 40. But as you can see, I think they present relatively similarly. The Zelos is going to be a bit skinnier, but again, is going to be a manual wind movement as opposed to this, which is going to be an automatic movement. So I think they're pretty comparable, and I think they stack up well, and these are actually two of my favorite watches. So a little bit of a spoiler here for the summary on this one, but I really obviously do like it. I bought two of them. But this Nova here, I think, stacks up well against it. Setting this to the side, I'm going to go ahead and switch over to the white. So this is another Zelos piece. This is the Zelos Horizon GMT V2. And as you can see here, sizing-wise, this one is 40 millimeters as well. But as you can see, this, I think, with having the fixed bezel and the bigger dial area and not having this tall box edge crystal here, I do think this wears larger and presents larger, which was a common complaint with this one, especially for larger wristed folks, is they thought this wore a little bit small. And then finally, just to bring a more traditional dressy piece in, this is a Citizen. This is also a 40 millimeter, and you can see how the dials stack up there. I think the Direnzo wears a little bit smaller, but I found the Citizen, for being a 40, does wear a little on the large side, but that gives you an idea as to this white next to kind of an off-white color. All right, so that covers really most of the bases as far as what it's like to actually live with this watch. So let's go ahead and get into some of the closing thoughts, the positives, the negatives, and the critiques. First, overall, in case you can't tell, I've been raving somewhat about this watch throughout. Obviously, I purchased two of them. I think it's a stunner. You know, whether you're talking the case, the bracelet, the actual dials themselves, every aspect of this I think is just exceptionally well done, very elegant, very classy, great looking. Additionally, I'm personally not a huge fan of Genta cases as a general rule. I don't think they're bad, just not really my cup of tea, but I love the flowing lines on this one. This is the first Genta that has really ever, Genta inspired, I should say, that is really ever spoken to me. And this is one, obviously, why I had to add it to my collection. The coating I think is a fantastic choice for the bracelet, the case, to keep everything looking new, especially with having all of this polish area. I would have hated to have this much polish and not have a coating to protect it and end up getting scratches all over and just have them look poor or have to constantly do upkeep on those. So I think that's a great touch as well. The clasp option, that's not something that I've seen from other companies, and that's something I really like. If you're going to do a butterfly, you're always taking a risk that it's not going to fit you, and I know that turns some people off or scares some people away. This one, with having the option for either or, I think that was a great call. Fantastic. And then finally, I do think that this nails the overall theme. We talked about the aviation, but the big thing is the versatility of the style. This is one I've worn mostly in casual wear. I've worn it in dress as well, especially these two colors. I don't think you can go wrong with either in any kind of setting. I think they just pull it off and they just adapt well. So this really is very Aquaterra-esque in that of kind of a do-all sports watch, and I think it nails that. All right, so now I did want to talk about a few critiques because they're not perfect, just as almost no watch is. So first, I did want to mention on this white, and it's going to be hard to see on camera, but right around the 12 o'clock position, I don't know if that'll pick that up or not, you can see kind of a little dimple right there. There is, I don't know if that was a bubble or what that was on the dial. I will say, in full disclosure for this, I did reach out to Sergio. He offered to replace the watch for me. I just gave him a heads up on that aspect, and just to see if he was aware of that. He offered immediately to replace that out for me. So no fault to them. Those little things happen, and it's very easy to miss. It's hard to even pick up on camera. In real world usage, not noticeable, but it did pick up, and I did see it, so I did want to disclose that to you. Additionally, on this one I mentioned during the unboxing, you can see just a little bit of shadowing, a little bit of unevenness to the lume application. It doesn't show up in lume usage, but you do see it in daytime. That's something I didn't notice it really on the white here, but I did notice it on the gray. That's a minor thing. I've seen that on a lot of other watches as well, but again, it's something that I did want to mention there. The polishing, I will tell you, for the polishing on this, it is not the highest quality polishing that I've ever seen on a bracelet. You can see, at least in person, there's just a little bit, part of that is probably oil and fingerprints, but there's just a tiny bit of waviness, a tiny bit of lines to that. And again, this is looking more dramatic on camera than it does in person. You really have to look closely. Basically, just don't expect a $6,000 Grand Seiko level of polish for the bracelet. In person, in real world use, it's not something that I've noticed, not something really to complain about. It is just something that I did want to mention. I didn't notice on the case. I think the case is a little more finely polished than the bracelet itself, but that's not to be unexpected. just a very minor nitpicky thing. The alignment here of the date window, and of course it's covered up, looks great for single digits. For the double digits, for me, it looks like it's a hair just too low on that. Again, extremely, extremely minor, and I'm being very nitpicky with this, but I just want to tell you everything that I personally have observed. The movement, this is a personal preference choice. I'm not a huge SW200 fan as a general rule of thumb. I would have personally would not have minded if they went ahead and went like with a Miyota 9015 or something along those lines. I think that could have actually shrunken it down even a little more on an already thin watch, and I think it could have brought the price point down. Which, that's something that I'll never complain about, and I like the Miyotas as a movement. But again, not a big deal, and I know a lot of people will prefer the SW200. That's just a preference item. We've already talked about that this is a fingerprint magnet, not really a critique. That's just something to be aware of in usage for it. And then finally, the screw pins. I do want to give a cautionary tale for this. I've never had issues with screw pins before. Some of these do have glue on them, and I had, unfortunately, a couple stuck pins on this. Sergio gave me some tips, and I'm actually going to put together a video on sizing and adjusting for screw pins on some, or actually bracelets in general. But just something to be aware of. If you do have some tightness to it, what he recommends is to soak it in hot water or to soften up that adhesive a little bit, and that will help for that. Again, minor thing, but this is all stuff. Just wanted to give you the full picture. All right, so finally, where does that leave us? Obviously, I think the answer is the fact that you're looking at two of them right here. Clearly, I like the watch. Clearly, I'd recommend the watch. I like the gray after I actually handled it and then ordered the white after receiving. So that, to me, is a testament in and of itself. I think this is a fantastically done watch. I don't think there's anybody who likes this style that's going to receive one of these and be disappointed in the watch. So I do highly recommend it. It's elegant. It's timeless. Whichever color you go with, I think they're all attractive. So I do hope this video has been helpful for you. If you're on the fence about picking one of these up, do encourage you to do so. The white, do note at time of publishing, this is sold out. However, there's another batch coming, so it will still be available. And there are some dealers that stock these as well. So I hope this video has been helpful for you. If you did enjoy this, please do hit that like button. And additionally, if you haven't done so already, please do hit that subscribe button. Thanks for watching.